I wouldn't necessarily call this the biggest fall off in UFC history, but it is definitely one of the most public. And this whole situation is kind of weird because some people would call it a fall off, some people wouldn't, depending on how you look at it. But of course, we're talking about Miss 12 gauge Paige Vanzant, a once promising up-and-coming MMA prospect, and at one point was looking like she could possibly be a legit contender for the title, but now has resorted to some other not so inspiring means of earning a living. To start off at the very beginning, Paige Vanzant joined the UFC with a 3-1 professional MMA record, her only loss being to Tisha Torres, or now she goes by Tisha Pennington, which has aged really well and is not a bad loss on her record. She was able to win her first 3 fights in the UFC, and 2 of them being by stoppage, but after that she would suffer her first UFC defeat at the hands of Rose Namajunas, which also another defeat that doesn't look bad at all. But from this point on is kind of where you start to see the trajectory of her career may not be going the way she had thought initially or may have wanted it to. In her next 4 fights, she goes even 2-2, 2 wins, 2 losses. And in her last fight in the UFC, it was a loss against popular fighter and fan favorite Amanda Hebos, to which she lost to her by armbar. She decides to call it quits and walk away from the octagon for good at a record of 8-5 as a professional. She decides to make a move and make a decision that was actually pretty damn shocking and surprising to a lot of us combat sports fans when she signs with the BKFC, or the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. She has 2 fights under the BKFC banner. To both she ended up losing by unanimous decision. But that wasn't the only change around this time around Paige Vanzant, but also around this time you can clearly notice that she started enhancing her, whatever you want to call it, her inventory, her assets. But we'll get more into that type of stuff a little bit later, because she decides to go even another route when she appeared on AEW Pro Wrestling in 2021 and signed with the AEW in 2022. They had her on a schedule for some type of beef match or something like that, but she just never appeared on it or participated. So it was ultimately chopped up to she just lost the interest in it. But back to the assets we were talking about before. Of course, it's well known she has started an OF page. She started her OF page back in June 5th of 2023. As she states, she thinks that she made more money in 24 hours on OF than she probably did her entire career fighting as an MMA fighter, which depending on the person, I guess you might consider that a W or an L. Some people don't really care about moral code or respect or anything like that. Whereas someone like me, I kind of take morals and principles seriously, so no amount of money will be worth it to me. I have too much self-respect for myself, but hey, to each their own. Doing just a tiny bit of research, she averaged around 1,000 likes a post in the very beginning, which I'm sure was bringing her a ton of freaking money. But now she averages around 500 to 600 likes, so damn near cut in half over just a year. But she still says that OF is her main source of income, and now she fights basically just as a hobby, which I don't think fighting is a hobby for her. I think it's promotion, just to keep her name out there a little bit more. It makes sense. It makes more business sense. This is where she dabbles in another source of income, which is probably the more ridiculous one and made me probably lose a few brain cells reading this freaking article. But Vanzant decides to sell a kiss card, which I guess is when you put lipstick on your lips and then you kiss a card and then you sell it for some reason. I don't know how the hell anyone can make any money off of this, but a very, very sad individual, probably more mentally unstable than Ryan Garcia after a few sips of wine. But this individual buys this card for 11,000 British pounds, which comes out to about 13,900 US dollars. Who the hell is paying that much money for a piece of cardboard with lipstick on it? Bro, I would not be surprised if this guy cuddles that thing every night. But moving on, her most recent fight was against Elbrook on the Misfits boxing card, which came out to a draw. But if you ask me, I consider that a loss, especially after getting embarrassed by getting sat down by a big right hand from Elbrook. After she was coming into that fight a massive favorite, and no one was giving Elbrook even the closest of chances to win. It's expected they'll have a rematch by the end of the year, but in the meantime, she has, of course, it was just announced she signed to participate in a power slap match. She's going up against a girl who's currently 0-1 in slap fighting, and Paige Vanzant is very open about this and calls herself a gangster for signing up to do something like this, but I don't know if I would call it gangster. I'd personally probably call it stupid. Look, man, I understand the power slap stuff gets a bad rep and a lot of people hate it, but I kind of like it. I find it freaking hilarious. Look, these people are adults. They could do with their bodies and their brain cells whatever they want to do. But even though I love it, I still understand that it's very stupid and I would never personally do it myself. But I'll give her props to signing up to do something like this. In my personal opinion, I just think it's more ploy to get her name out there to a bigger audience so people can see her and know who she is, and maybe push more traction over to her OF page where she can make the real money. But I don't know, this whole situation is kind of sad to me because she had a genuinely good, legit MMA background with a legit record and was looking like a very promising prospect. But to be where she's at today with not only, little to no respect for herself, but little to no respect from the MMA community and the MMA fan base as well, it's kind of a disappointing downfall, which of course a lot of people out there would consider it a downfall, but some people out there wouldn't, just because I guess she's making more money today. But in my opinion, respect is more than that. But of course, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, I thank you all so much for the support, and I'll catch you in the next video.